Advent, we have some exciting news to share with you today about returning to in-person worship. For the past several weeks, a team of our staff and Advent members who work in the education, safety, medical, and public health fields have been researching best practices and working on plans to resume in-person worship, taking into account the great data that you gave us by completing our congregational survey. Last night, our Advent leadership team unanimously approved those plans. An email will go out to our entire congregation detailing that plan, but we want to share with you the gist today.
First of all, we know from our congregational survey that the perspectives of our congregation run the entire gamut. Some of you want to return to in-person worship immediately with no changes or restrictions whatsoever. Others will continue online only until there's effective vaccine for COVID-19. No matter where you are on the response spectrum to COVID-19, we want you to know that we honor and respect your perspective, and we have taken into account the many opinions of our congregation in forming these plans.
By now, most of us are starting to get used to many new terms and policies in places like grocery stores, dentists, healthcare providers. All of those are intended to keep us safe and healthy. Capacity limits, social distancing, and facial coverings are now commonplace. These protections will also be a part of our plan as well as we resume in-person worship. We want to share those upcoming changes with you.
First of all, our sanctuary capacity will be considerably limited to allow for proper social distancing. We will ask everyone planning to come to worship to pre-register for 2 reasons. 1, to ensure we don't have to turn anyone away for worship. In other words, to make sure you have a seat. And secondly, to have a list of people to contact in the event that we later learn that someone who was in worship the previous Sunday has tested positive for COVID-19. To avoid exposures, members of our guest services team will methodically seat you to ensure proper social distancing. For the safety of all, we will require masks to be worn. If you have your own mask, we encourage you to bring it. If you don't have one will be provided when you arrive. We know this is less than ideal and nobody enjoys wearing a mask, but we have to do all we can to mitigate the risk for our congregation and to keep everyone safe and healthy.
Another thing that's less than ideal is that there will be no nursery or children's ministry offerings during worship, so children will need to attend sanctuary worship with their parents. Because our sanctuary will have to be thoroughly cleaned and sanitized between services, we will stick with 2 Sunday morning services, 1 traditional and 1 contemporary. But we may have to adjust the times from the current online offering to be sure there's enough time to vacate and clean the sanctuary between services. A final big change is in regard to congregational singing. Singing is so integral to our worship life, but the experts say that it's also one of the riskiest activities in larger gatherings. The reason for this is that singing projects droplets much farther than speaking normally. Masks help, but cannot completely mitigate all risk. Our musicians will continue to lead the way you've experienced online.
Here is our timeline. Starting June 14th, United Methodist Churches in South Carolina are released to begin the process of resuming in-person gatherings. On June 21st, we will have staff families and some guest services team members in the sanctuary for worship to start to practice our new logistics and begin training for worship in the new world of social distancing. We want to work out any kinks in traffic flow and other processes that will allow us to follow the CDC guidelines for large gatherings. On June 28th, we're going to continue online worship at our normal times and then have a special graduate recognition service for the class of 2020 at 11:30. Graduates, their parents, and their siblings will be invited to attend that service in person as our first attempt to practice our new protective measures for in-person worship. July 4th weekend, we typically only have 1 service in a normal year. I'm sure you would all agree that our staff team has worked very hard in this season, as has our media team who facilitate the live stream every week. So on July 5th, we're going to have 1 blended service only that we will pre-record to give our staff and our media team a break before we begin in-person worship on July 12th.
This is our plan for now, but we will continue to monitor the situation, follow guidance from the CDC and our local health professionals with the goal of returning to pre-COVID life as quickly as possible. In the meantime, it may not be found in your translation of the Gospels, but I am convinced that Jesus said, "Blessed are the flexible, for they will not be bent out of shape." COVID-19 has certainly put our flexibility to the test, but returning to in-person worship, however different than it used to be, is a huge step in the right direction. For those of you who are comfortable returning to worship in person, we look forward to seeing you soon. For those of you who are not, we'll continue to connect with you online.